Hey everyone, my name is Charlie and today I want to take a look back at the books that I read in January 2014. This idea was sparked off by Smut by Bennett. A few months ago, one of my fellow writers at the writers group gave me this book because she knew I liked Bennett, she'd read it and knew she was never going to reread it. And I thought that was very kind. I told her I hadn't read this one yet. You can imagine my surprise when I was going back through my reading journal and saw Smut, March 2018. I decided, since I was on YouTube at the time, I would go back, I would watch my wrap-up from March 2018 and see if it was the same Smut. And it was. It was the hardback edition of this book, and apparently I really enjoyed the book and could not believe how smutty it actually got. And clearly, Charlie of 2018 really liked this book and thought that it was fantastic and appreciated everything that Bennett had done within it. I have no memory of having read that book. When I looked at the titles, I could not remember them. One of the things I was hoping for in the video was that maybe, watching back, I'd discover that there were actually two completely different stories in that volume. But no, I said that I was keeping that book and going to revisit it. I can't find it anywhere on my shelves. I don't know whether it got mentioned in an unhaul. Honestly, have no memory of this book. And so I thought, why don't we look back on January 2014 and see, which is 10 years ago, and see whether I can remember any of the books that I read during that time. I do know that in January 2014, I was going through a bit of a tough time. I'd left university the previous year and immediately started working with the charity that I had volunteered for and where I still am now. However, they were opening a new, almost superstore in a town near me. I'd been given the shop assistant role, but we weren't doing very well. We were in a bit of an odd location and the profits were really nosediving. We weren't getting a lot of customers. I had reached a point where I hadn't slept in 6 months, so I was going to doctors about that. And this was also the year, at the start of the year, was when they put me on a pill to help me sleep. I got to have the brain scan that I'd wanted because I'd started having olfactory hallucinations. Luckily, that just came to nothing and I got diagnosed with a chronic migraine syndrome, which was always fun to get told. So I don't think there's going to be many books here, but we will see. Immediately, I can tell what point I was at with my writing at this time. So the previous year was when I started writing the children's book. When I look at the final few books of 2013, I was clearly in the midst of writing the children's book because there's a lot of children's literature there. And I started 2014 off by reading Prince Caspian by C.S. Lewis and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. All I can tell you is that I don't like the Narnia books. I found these books incredibly dry and I did not like the Christian allegory. I might have read more later on in the year, but I'm not too certain about that. Then I read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I am certain that this was a reread for me, but I can't say for sure because I can't find it anywhere else. I know that I read that book twice. The first time I read it, I was shocked by the fact that I had enjoyed it. Indeed, when I went to reread it, I was shocked that I'd got this craving to go and reread it because there's a lot about that book that I shouldn't like. A weird spelling of the main character's name, a very arrogant main character, but then there were things that harkened back to some of the things that I'd liked in the fantasy of my childhood. There was one bit in particular towards the end that actually inspired a fantasy novel that I wrote loads of plans for back in the day, and my friend told me that I really ought to stick with this one. But my friend Lindsay actually told me to stick with a lot of books that I never stuck with because I'm just a terrible person like that. I used to write a fantasy, that was it. Young adult fantasy, urban fantasy, and then for the last 10 years I've written, I don't know what to call what I'm writing now. Yeah, I liked The Name of the Wind. When I read The Wise Man's Fear, it made me get rid of both books and decide that I was never going to read them again, but I did like that book. Then we have The White Woman on the Green Bicycle by Monique Roffey. I had been seeing this book for years before I eventually asked for it for one Christmas. I remember liking the book, but not really wholeheartedly adoring it. And I have absolutely no idea what I rated it. you could probably find out if you went to Goodreads, because I think I was still using Goodreads then. I think I unhauled this book. I have no recollection of it at all, other than it having a green cover and a woman on a bicycle. And then we have Keeping the Dead by Tess Gerritsen. I really liked the Rizzoli and Isles series. I didn't actually know I'd read this one. I've kept thinking about getting back into that series for the longest time. I'm also just looking down at the list for the following months. This was probably one of the last years that I read young adult literature. There isn't really a lot of adult fiction, contemporary fiction in here, which makes sense because, as I say, this was the last year that I really read young adult literature. I know that I still did in 2015, but I also know that in 2015 was when I made the decision not to read it anymore, because I found that I was constantly comparing it to adult fiction and recognising that I'd maybe aged out of those books. Also, only read 5 books in January 2014, 2 of which were on the 1st of January, and then I read The Name of the Wind. That finished on the 10th. It took me 2 weeks to read The White Woman on the Green Bicycle, and then I read Keeping the Dead. There is every chance I was actually reading loads of other books at the same time, because before I transferred the reading journal, I had them all in different notebooks and it was just a mess, and then my nan gifted me this. I would write down everything that I'd started, even if I didn't finish it. Nowadays, if I don't read at least 10 books a month, I feel like I failed. And for the last few years, I've read at least 20 in January. And it's only this year that I've been thinking about not doing that and just focusing on finding good reads, as opposed to reading a load of short books just to fill up some quota that I have created in my own mind. Either way, that was interesting for me, and I hope that it was interesting for you. Them's the books. If you have enjoyed this video and like to see me go over the books that I read in February 2014 next month, then please let me know in the comments. If you've read any of these books and would like to discuss them, then please feel free to do so as well. I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and until next time, that is all.